With the conclusion of the Diablo 4 Season 8 PTR yesterday, I wanted to share my final thoughts. I'm going to be coming at this not from the point of a blaster because that is not me. I have a full-time job, I've never cleared Pit 150, I've never even hit Paragon 300 on any season that has been out there. I absolutely just love to get on, slay some demons, and hang out with people in the game. What I'm going to share with you is everything that I got to test on the public test realm. With the way that it stands and how it felt when I played, there are a lot of misconceptions out there about the difficulty level, about the drops, and then about how grindy this season is actually going to be. Now, I do have a lot of experience playing Diablo 4, so there is going to be that factor, and I do understand that. So we'll hop in, I'll show you exactly what I found, some of the things that I got to test, and then all of the feedback that I'm going to be passing along to the developers. Before we hop into the good stuff, if I want to make it as a full-time content creator, I gotta have sponsors, so here's a quick word from one of those sponsors. Rogue Energy is hands down the best option for you if you're about to sit down to a long gaming session. Not only is it a big boost of intense energy, it also gives you extreme focus. The best part about it is that it's a fraction of the cost of your traditional energy drinks. Browse their easy-to-use website and check out their top picks. I love their tubs. Delicious, smooth. My top picks have been the blood orange and the pink lemonade. But with a wide variety of flavors, there is something for you. Don't forget to use the link in the description of this video and my code at checkout to save yourself 10% on your orders. Enjoy the extreme energy, and thank you from all of us at the Cliptonian Legion. Now, if you got to watch some of my previous videos, some of this will be in those videos. I'm going to have this linked in the description of this video, so you'll have access to it. What we're going to do is we're going to break down everything that I did for the first couple days when I tested level 1 all the way to Torment 4. Then we'll cover some of the gameplay feedback that I found, and then on top of that, we'll go over just my final thoughts and what I would like to see when the season does go live. So we're going to start with the day 1 leveling process. Level 1 to 42 took me about 4.5 hours. Now, during my leveling process, I was talking to chat. We were going and testing different things. So this was not just straight grinding to level 60. This was just me going around, exploring all the new stuff, trying out all the incursions. So this was not a push to get there as fast as I possibly could. The goal of this testing was to make sure that when I got on, I played the game, had fun, and I wasn't in a race to be the world first to hit level 60. Level 42 to level 60 took me another about 4.5 hours to get there. Now, I do have the VODs linked down here, so you can go through and you can look at all of those, and you can watch, you can skip through, you can kind of see what I was doing as I was going through and leveling. What I did from level 1 to level 35 was I went through and I did Helltides, Whispers, and then I did some incursions to get some boss powers, try out the new mechanics. At level 35, that was when I got my first Nightmare Dungeon key. I was hunting for one before then. Nightmare Dungeons are actually incredibly great for leveling. They give you a ton of different shrines, so you get cursed shrines and you get cursed chests. They're very, very high density, high spawning monsters, so it's a very, very good source of experience as you're leveling, so don't count out Nightmare Dungeons as you're going. So after I got my first Nightmare Dungeon key, I went and I did a bunch of Nightmare Dungeons, then I did some Whispers, and I sprinkled in a little bit of the Undercity because I wanted to try out and see how that went. The Undercity was actually a really great source of experience as well. You do get some tributes early on if you've completed the Deeds of a Champion quests that give you additional experience for completing them. Once I got to level 52, then I remembered that strongholds were a really, really great source of experience, so I went and I tested some of those. You can actually start getting really good experience for them around level 45 to 46. Those were about a level to a level and a half at level 52. So I did those all the way straight to level 60, and it actually sped up the process very, very much. It was very quick to get those final couple levels in. In the early stages of the game, the Nightmare Dungeons feel really great. You can use the Nightmare Dungeons to actually target farm some of the aspects that you're going to need to make your build come alive in the later stages of your leveling process. Because we don't have the Headhunt Zone in this season, and that's not going to give you just literally everything that you need, you can take the time to go to some of these dungeons, get the aspects that you're going to need in order to make your build work, and then you can set yourself up for success later on in the leveling process. When I first started, leveling through the Whisper caches was about 1 level, maybe a little bit more per turn-in of Whispers. You can do Whispers inside of the Helltides. It's a really great way to do it. I would suggest avoiding the Blood Maiden if you're looking to level quickly. The Blood Maiden takes a long time to kill, especially at early levels, and is actually very difficult. You can die quite a bit because she is very strong. Incursions are not the most efficient way to level, but it is a very fun mechanic to do, and it is a really great way to get the boss powers that you're going to need in order to get yourself from level 1 to level 60. You can head over there as soon as you start the game and you get through your seasonal quest line. You can go to the incursion and start doing those. Now, the boss powers are subject to change. However, they are very strong, and they probably still will be very strong in the new season. So I would suggest taking some time to go there and get some of those boss powers. They are pretty cool to do. Some of the most notable boss powers that I used as a barbarian was definitely going to be Sinrat's Flame as my main power. With the barbarians and Lunging Strike, it basically just carried me pretty much through the leveling process. It made the process very fast, very fun. You just teleport around with Lunging Strike, exploding monsters all over the place. It was a fun power to use. If you're looking for some survivability, the Blackmailer Sabotage, if you can gain Fortify, if you have the expansion pack, you can use right here even to proc this. You get Barrier pretty much constantly, and it is a very strong barrier, especially during the leveling process. The way that loot worked, it actually felt very, very intuitive. At level 10, that was when yellow gear started dropping. You can't temper until you get to level 10. Now, why would you want to temper at level 10? If you go to the blacksmith at level 10, you actually will have unlocked the elemental temper for your weapons. Those tempers will allow you to do up to 100 damage. 100 damage doesn't sound like a lot, but at level 10, you're only doing about 4 to 10 damage. So that is 10 times the amount of damage that you're going to be doing. By the time I hit level 11 and level 12, I had enough materials to constantly temper every single time that I went back to town, and I got upgrades for my weapons. I never ran out of materials during the leveling process by turning in Whispers and then salvaging all of the gear that I found. I was able to constantly keep those tempers on, which made me do a ton more damage just by adding those in. Day 2 of the public test realm, we got to Paragon 128. That was with doing a whole bunch of different activities, testing a whole bunch of things. We did pit runs. So I did that with anything I could do with about 3 to 4 minute runs just to get some experience and get some Paragon points in. I had to go unlock the Infernal Horde, so I had to go do the entire quest. If you've already done the Infernal Hordes on any of your seasonal characters, you won't have to do that quest. But that was a long quest line that I just went through and I did just to go back and kind of get a little bit of nostalgia, run through the quest line, and then unlock the Infernal Hordes. I didn't actually get to run one of the Infernal Hordes, but I went through and I did that. So that ate up some time while I was playing as well. That's when I started the Nightmare Dungeon grind to get some Obdicite so I could start masterworking so I could move from Torment 1 into Torment 4. I went and collected all of the boss powers. I wanted to get all of the remaining boss powers. I was able to do it on Torment 1. As soon as I got there, I was able to go around and start collecting all the powers. I just had to remember to go to the world boss because I always forget to do the world boss. So all I had to do was just remember that, set a little timer or something. You can use a site like helltides.com to give you a timer as to when the next world boss is going to be spawning. So it's a really great tool if you wanted to use something like that. And then in between all of that, I ran Helltides because you can target farm gear by opening the specific chest that you need. It was a great source of obols and then also materials and then whispers as well. Once I picked up Andariel's Flame, it was also a great source of increased damage for the leveling process. Now, I'm sure that at some point in the higher levels of the pits, depending on the build, this will fall off. But for the leveling process, this was a really, really big jump. I have my 2 VODs here set up so that if you wanted to check out what it looked like and bounce around and see all of the different things that I did those days, you can skip through those too. As you're going through and you're looking for your tempering manuals, Whisper Caches was the best place to get all of the tempering manuals, so going through Helltides was a great source of doing that. If you get to kill the Blood Maiden, because as you get into Torment 1, you should be strong enough to get through the Blood Maiden a lot easier than you did while you were leveling. Those were really great sources of getting your tempering manuals. The Obol Vendor was also a really great source of getting the GAs. Later on in the video, I'll go through the testing that I did for getting GAs from the Obol Vendors, so you can kind of see exactly what it was like and then how many GAs I got for the obols that I spent. Make sure you keep an eye out for the goblins. They were a really great source of obols, they were a really great source of materials, and a really great source of gold. 400,000 gold just for one goblin kill when you're first starting out to level is a really great amount of gold. And with the increase in obol vendors that we were just talking about, having that obol goblin drop all of the obols in the bag was a really great source also for getting the gear that I needed to get started in order to push from Torment 1 to Torment 4. Before we hop into the gameplay feedback that I have, I was able to make it to Torment 4 on day number 2, and I was only Paragon level 128. I did post a bunch of stuff showing the run, and you can see exactly what it is because I have all the VODs for it. I had no masterworking higher than 8. I had some 750 pieces of gear on that weren't even masterworked. So getting to Torment 4 with this current season and the way that it's set up on the PTR was not as challenging as everybody made it out that it was going to be. Now, Torment 4 is definitely harder than it was in Season 7, but with the addition of the boss powers, it definitely did not feel like it was not attainable whatsoever. For the gameplay feedback that we're going to leave for the developers, the first thing we're going to talk about is incursions. Sometimes they are very, very, very far from the waypoints, so it would be nice to see them a little bit closer to the waypoints. You only have a couple minutes to get to them before they start, so having them a little bit closer will allow people to get to them. Some of them may be skipped if they're a little bit too far, so it would be nice to see those moved a little bit closer. Once the incursions start, they disappear off the map. So the icon is gone. That means that whoever you're in the instance with is going to be the only people that will be there. So that kind of limits it to the amount of people that do actually make it to that incursion. And then if they don't, they're going to go to the next one. So you might end up having not very many people depending on where it is. During the incursions, after you kill the very first boss, you actually have to move a really, really far distance in order to get to the next spawn of the bosses. So in between there, you kind of just get on your mount and then you run past a whole bunch of monsters because you have to make it there in a certain amount of time. So it feels like you're just kind of skipping out on a bunch of things that you could be killing. It was hard for me to like get on my horse and then run to the next one. So we'll see what kind of changes come out of the next season. The tempering UI was changed. That was a really great change to see. What they did is that now it saves the tempering manual that you put in. If you select, let's say, Worldly Finesse, and that's what you want to keep on trying to temper for critical strike damage, it does not have to reset every time. You don't have to go back and select it if you miss it. You just click on the temper button and then re-tempers the same weapon for you. Now, it also works if you swap weapons. If you have two weapons on, let's say a main hand and offhand, and you wanted to do Worldly Finesse on both of them, it saves the Worldly Finesse when you swap to the next weapon. In order to cancel it, you have to right-click, so we'll see what happens because you can't put a new piece of gear in. It would be great to see if you just clicked on the next piece of gear and it would completely reset all of the tempers that you were put in there. So we'll see how the UI faces out, but it was a really, really great change that I was very surprised to see. Boss materials have been kind of increased with the way that the new boss summoning materials work. We'll have to see what ends up changing when we actually go live. Helltides was a really, really great source for living steel, but then outside of that, there's really no way to target farm the boss materials. So it definitely is going to be an interesting thing to see what the developers come out with when we hit Season 8 and see where the target farm is going to be for boss materials. You're going to need 12 for the bottom tier of the bosses, and you're going to need 4 for the top tier. Now, each person is going to need that in the party. And with groups, if you wanted to bring your friends to the group, that means you're going to need 48 of the bottom tier bosses if you want to fill up your party and give out the materials for everybody to open up the caches. So I don't know if that's going to stay exactly like that. I do like the system of everybody needing their own materials in order to open up the cache, but it definitely is a little bit steep, especially if you want to get some friends into the game and you want to bring them on boss runs, and then they have to have all of this material in order to support the entire group. It definitely can feel a little bit steep, so we'll see what happens with that. Boss teleporting is a great feature. It's absolutely super great to be able to teleport to the bosses. There is one with Lord Zir where you have to click on something else in order to see the teleport, so I'm sure that's just a quick little UI change that we'll get to see. The boss summoning. The pedestal has a timer, and I think it's about 20 seconds that the timer is going, and that is where maybe Belial could come. I do see the benefit in it where you want to be able to give the party enough time to open up the cache so that when it disappears, they don't actually get to miss out on the loot. Now, I would love to see a feature where after they open up the caches and everybody in the party has done it, it immediately disappears and then the pedestal respawns. So that would be pretty cool because it does definitely interrupt the flow of just going through and killing bosses, especially if you've put together this really strong build that you want to show off while you're going and killing some of these bosses. I didn't really get to test too many boss kills during the time that I was on the PTR. I just went to go show off some of the bosses and show people what the new bosses look like. However, I did find a mythic as I was just going through and showing people the bosses. I went and I did one Duriel run one night and a mythic dropped. So they do drop. We did get some drops on the PTR, so that was a really good sign to see. Because I didn't really get to do too many bosses, I didn't really get to see what it felt like for the Ancestral Unique drop rate, but I did find a couple as I was doing some testing, so it wasn't like they were not dropping. Your regular Greater Affix gear, the legendary pieces of gear, was not an issue for me. I was able to find pieces of gear. I found a couple 2s, a couple 3s, and I was able to get the gear that I needed in order to get into Torment 4. And then here was my Obol vendor testing. I spent 27,500 Obels. I got 3 Greater Affix Uniques, 16 Greater Affix Legendary, and then 2 2GA Legendary gears. One of them was good, one of them was not. In the current Season 7, I don't think I have seen a single Greater Affix gear from the Obol vendor, so this is actually a really great change. This was way more. There were times where I would spend a full 2,500 and I would find 4 to 5 GA pieces of gear. Now, obviously, the RNG is still going to be there with whether or not they're going to be good, but they were actually there and they were showing up for me, which was really nice to see. My final thoughts. Leveling from 1 to level 60 felt actually really good. It is faster than Season 6 for me by quite a lot. It was a little bit slower than Season 7, but not by much. The only issue that I do see coming up with this season is that there's no direction. In Season 7, we're all used to getting into our new characters. You head straight to Headhunt Zone because you know that's going to be a great place for leveling. Now, it's kind of up in the air. Do you go do Whispers? Are those more important than Nightmare Dungeons? Or do we go do Helltides? When do we transition to Strongholds? So if you've never leveled outside of Season 7, then there might be a little bit of confusion as to where to go. I will have several videos coming out, but that is definitely the concern that I saw coming out of Season 8 and testing out the leveling, is that there may not be direction for players that have never experienced leveling like this before. The loot while I was leveling actually felt fine. Like I said, we covered that a little bit. I had a full set of legendaries by level 42. I found from a goblin my very first legendary at level 16. That was a really, really cool surprise. The goblins were a really big win while I was leveling, so this was a really easy transition into Season 7 to Season 8. There was not much of a difference. There was a little bit in terms of when the gear started dropping, but I didn't really notice all too much that I was lacking in power and I was lacking in damage. Make sure you get that temper in, because the temper really, really helps at level 10. With the current state of the boss powers, now the boss powers are absolutely going to change when we go into the live server, but this was just my experience right now. Going from Torment 1 to Torment 4 was actually easier than in Season 7. The boss powers were very, very strong. They're very offensive instead of them just being complementary to your character in Season 7. So I was actually able to get to Torment 4 much faster than I did in Season 7 than I did in Season 8. So we'll see what ends up happening with the final patch notes when they come out, but that one was definitely something that I was very surprised at. When I was pushing the pits, you need only level 55 in order to get to Torment 4. I got to level 55 and I was shocked to see that it said level 55 was Torment 4, because at level 50 in the pits, I flew through it. So then when I got to level 55, it felt exactly the same. I flew through the dungeon, we hit Torment 4, and then I was able to start farming in Torment 4 as well. The pit scaling, they actually increase the monster's life by a pretty significant amount as you go higher up into the tiers. I do like this feature. I like being able to push pits and see how far you can get. I'm never a 150 clearer, so making sure that I can just have some sort of challenge in order to take any build. Meta, off meta, doesn't really matter what it is. As long as it's a fun build, I want to see how far I can go. Now, what I would like to see change a little bit is the scaling after 100 becomes exponentially harder, because the glyphs are tied to the pits, and level 100 is where you can max out your glyphs. If you have almost every build that can't get to pit 100, which it definitely won't be the case in Season 8, I don't really know exactly where the scaling is going to fall off when we go live, but if that is the case, then you're missing out on a lot of power in order to push higher into the pits. So because you can't get that power, you can't push higher. So we'll get to see where the final scaling falls off with the pits, and then also with your boss powers, and then with your glyphs. Maybe we'll see a couple changes when the next live Campfire chat happens, so expect to see something different coming out of that. Overall, I am very excited to hop into Season 8. I have been excited about every single season that we have done. There hasn't been a season that I haven't played that I haven't had fun in, so I'm going to have fun in Season 8 regardless of what it feels like. My favorite part of Diablo 4 is hopping onto the stream with all of you and then playing together. So if everybody wants to, stop by, come and play with me. We run stuff every single night. It's my favorite part of Diablo 4. I think some of the negativity around the difficulty scaling that Blizzard talked about is definitely a little overblown. I had people in the comments that were saying that they were scaling difficulty up by 50%. They were making everything 5 times harder. They were lowering all the drop rates by a significant amount. That definitely wasn't the case when we hopped onto the PTR, and I definitely don't think it's going to be the case going into Season 8. Definitely take it with a grain of salt. There was a lot of stuff that I definitely got to test that I was very surprised about because of the hype that was around how hard it was supposed to be. It's definitely going to be something that you will still have fun with and still enjoy in Season 8. I'm live every night. I would love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the flip side.